is Steve Stred. I'm thankful for Brad for inviting me for his 31 Days of Horror event here. Um, he contacted me and asked me if I'd be wanting or willing to read something from one of my books, which I'd absolutely jumped at the chance. Brad's been super supportive for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years since we've kind of connected. Today I'm going to read from a novel that's coming out of mine called Incarnate. Should be out in about a month from when I'm reading this right now. It's about halfway through September, so middle of October should see the light of day. The book itself, I describe it as coming of age. It follows a almost 13-year-old boy named Ryan who has discovered that his dad's kind of long lost relative used to live in a house that's supposed to be haunted, so they go there for summer, and as usual, things don't go as they should. So this is going to be the prologue. Set in 1840. They huddled together, sheltering from the rain under the tattered canopy of the cart. The horse pulling them was unfazed as the sky opened, rain increasing in intensity almost immediately. Leaving the main road, they followed the narrow path that would take them to the house and refuge from the storm. Darkness pulled around the property line, the ground shrouded in shadows and secrets. "I don't like this one bit," the man in the back said as the reins cracked, the horse pulling the cart to a stop near the front door of the two-level house. Considering their reason for visiting, it appeared nondescript in nature. "I know, but I need to find answers. We need answers," the man driving the cart replied, his curt response enough to elicit a drop in the other man's shoulders. Both men leaped out, the driver tying the horse to the post, the other helping the two women down. The foursome walked tentatively to the house, the wind pummeling the structure, enough to give it the appearance that it was swaying. A shutter from the second floor banged and crashed, the group flinching at the unexpected sound. Both men watched the edges of the house, where the darkness took over, expecting at any moment for something to burst forth. They stepped up onto the porch, and as the man at the front went to knock, the door opened, the light from within spilling out save for the space filled by the woman's shape. "Welcome," she said. "Please do come in and out of this nasty weather." She stepped aside so that the four could make their way in. Once they'd entered, the woman remained, looking around the space outside before closing the door. Both men glanced at one another, wondering what exactly she thought might be out there. "Everyone, please sit," the woman said, motioning for the gathered to take their seats. "May I take your jackets? Would any of you care for some tea or warm cider?" The trip to the house had been a somber affair. The old gravel road was rough and unmaintained. It was already a cold day, but somehow the air in the house was colder. Their moods had long ago soured, but the reality of this trip made them even more so. Worried glances were shared before the husband spoke. "We're good, thank you," he said, not wanting to offend the woman, but wanting to get started. "The less time spent here, the better." Turning to his wife, he said, "It's okay, my love. Do sit. We must get answers, yes?" His wife nodded, taking her spot and shuffling forward as her husband guided her chair closer to the table. He pushed some of the puffed-up material down on the front of his suit jacket before taking a seat beside his wife. "You two, sit, please," he said. His wife's sister and her husband took their places around the table, the man's face sharing the other's disgust at being within the house. The black silk cloth that was draped over the wooden table appeared to undulate with each flicker of the candles that sat on top. None of them wanted to place their hands upon it, fearing it would take the shape of a black serpent at the first touch. The woman clapped her hands, making each guest jump from the unexpected sound. As if waiting for the signal, thunder boomed outside, a flash of lightning illuminating the rain-soaked trees for a brief moment. "Thank you again for reaching out to me, Mr. and Mrs. Henshaw. I know it was a very difficult decision. My name is Lillian Matthews, widow of Mr. Eric Matthews. It is my connection with my deceased love that allows me to open the door between the realms. Please, if you may, tell me and the spirits that listen, why have you reached out?" Thunder rumbled again. In the darkness of the front, something sprinted through the deep grass, its claws slicing the strands beside it. More glances, cleared throats. The four shifted uncomfortably, the sad smile that rested upon Lillian's face never leaving as she looked from one person to the next. Finally, Mr. Henshaw spoke. "Our son, our beloved boy Samuel," he let out a sob, his wife placing her hand on his. "He was taken from us far too soon, only 14 years old. We don't know what happened, how he died. We want to reach out to him and tell him we love him, and that we're so very sorry that he was taken from this world, that I didn't protect him when I should have. Mrs. Henshaw was now comforted by her sister, the brother-in-law shifting in his chair, looking anywhere but at the tears that spilled forth from his relatives. I understand, Mr. Henshaw. I'm so very sorry for your loss. I hope I can offer you some assistance, some closure. Have any of you ever been involved with a seance? Lillian looked around the room, finding blank stares, except for the brother-in-law. Even in the low light of the room, it was obvious that he wished to be elsewhere. You, sir, what is your name? Me? He replied with a faint surprise, as though Lillian was speaking to someone else. When she didn't take the bait and respond, he smirked, trying to find a way to get her off of her game. Again, nothing. Michael Patrickson, he said, sitting up in his chair and squaring his shoulders. He wasn't about to let this charlatan fool his sister-in-law. He didn't even know what this event cost, but he knew for a fact that they were being taken. Do you believe we can speak with the dead? Michael chuckled at the question, looking at the other three. Ah, a non-believer. Well, Mr. Patrickson, what is about to happen may upset you. All of you, she said, dramatically sweeping her arm at the group. But I promise you I'm no fraud, no matter what you think or have heard. Things will become chaotic, frantic, and you will become frightened and disturbed. Saying all of that, I need you to remain as calm as possible and not act irrationally. Do I have your promise? The four adults nodded, Michael keeping the smirk plastered on his face. And with that, let us begin. A hard wind rattled the house, forcing it to groan as it shook on its foundation. The tablecloth undulated once again, and this time a scaled shimmer flittered for a brief moment. Odd noises and barks sounded from just outside, shadows leaping and jumping along the exterior walls of the house. I want to welcome the 4 members of the Henshaw family into my home. I want the spirits who inhabit the spaces near us to welcome them and to promise no harm will come to my guests. To Eric Matthews' guests. I reside in this home by myself. Let me assure my guests and the spirits that nobody else is present. I've locked the 3 rooms upstairs and will secure the windows and door here on the main floor. The space will remain safe for the 5 of us, for the living who are seated around this table. Lillian went to the front door, turning the heavy lock into place. She checked the windows, ensuring they were all shut and latched. Then she placed 4 more candles on the table, one in front of each adult. Lighting them, she began to hum, eyelids flickering rapidly. Her eyes opened and closed as though suffering a seizure. The 4 were unsure what to do. Lillian's eyes flew open and she smiled, her face showing excitement for the briefest of moments when she pressed the front of her dress down, flattening the ruffles. She took her seat between Mr. Henshaw and Mr. Patrickson. Lillian was facing Mrs. Henshaw, her gaze forcing Mrs. Henshaw to look away. If you'd all be so kind as to place your hands on the table, palms down. They reluctantly followed her instructions, wincing when their hands made contact. Michael flopped his hands down like a petulant child. Lillian ignored him. Instead, she focused on her breathing, smiling at each seated person one by one. As I said, my name is Lillian Matthews, wife of the deceased Eric. Eric, darling, are you here with us? The room was eerily silent, the adults' eyes darting around, looking for movement, listening for a signal, nobody sure what was going to happen. Eric, it's Lillian. How I missed you so. Were you able to help these kind people shed some light on what happened to their beloved? Michael shifted. He was trying to stifle a laugh, only out of respect for Mrs. Henshaw. He knew how devastated she was, how they'd all been after the grisly discovery of Samuel's body down in the gulch over a month ago. Eric? A crisp bang sounded from upstairs. The group collectively gasped. Mrs. Henshaw grabbed her husband's hand, her face going instantly pale. Please, palms on the table. I need the connectivity, Lillian said, nodding as Mr. Henshaw returned her hands. The 4 noted the change in her tone of voice, a subtle shift that didn't fill them with hope. Eric? Was that you, my love? The candle flames danced higher, a cold wind whipping through the space. Lillian smiled, inhaling deeply. Yes. There you are, my dear. You scared me. I was worried you weren't going to respond. I'd like you to meet my friends. They've lost their son and would like some answers. Can you help with this? The group watched Lillian, waiting for some sort of sign to indicate Eric could help. Honey? Suddenly the room's temperature rocketed as though they were sitting in the middle of an oven. The light that shone in from outside turned orange, then red, the room growing hotter and hotter. The candles began to melt and bubble, the flame from each wick continuing to flicker. Eric! Eric! Lillian screamed, not out of fear, but trying to control the situation, the Henshaws realized. She slapped her hands on the tabletop, and instantly the night grew dark again and the room became cold. What was the meaning of that? Why would you do such a thing? She asked, looking around the room. Probably for our benefit, to make us believe, Michael replied with a grin. Lillian went to reply, wanting to tell him to behave, when a massive bang sounded from upstairs. "Who is that?" Lillian asked, which unnerved everyone. "Eric, who is here with us?" A sound rattled around down the stairs, a click clacking that caused their skin to break out in bumps and their hair to stand on end. It was unnatural inside of the house, but animal in nature. It grew louder before suddenly stopping. A hideous laugh erupted from the second floor. Lillian pushed her chair back so quickly she tumbled over it as she caught on a floorboard and tipped back. Mr. Henshaw rushed to help her up, but stopped when he heard what she was mumbling. No, it can't be. No, Eric, no. What is it, woman? Mr. Henshaw asked as the first candle snuffed out. You need to leave, Lillian shouted, still tangled within the chair. Lillian, please, we need to know, Mr. Henshaw said. Mrs. Henshaw said, herself now standing. Another bang sounded from the level above, another candle's flame going dark. The other two stood, joining Mr. and Mrs. Henshaw. Nobody was sure what to do, where to go. Shadows leaped across the walls from things cavorting outside. A steady pounding of rain had begun, the noise threatening to deafen the people in the house. Jesus Christ, in his name and power, I summon his strength, Lillian shouted, finally making her way to a standing position. Her dress was disheveled, but she was free of the door. She rushed to the floor, pushing Mr. and Mrs. free of the chair. She rushed to the floor, pushing Mr. and Mrs. Henshaw towards the door. Come, you must leave. You don't have much time, she begged, pushing on the lock. It wouldn't budge, no matter which way the mechanism was turned or pulled, pushed or pried. The lock remained anchored to the metal. Another candle went dark, the room now lit only by the remaining two. Shadows danced in a macabre choreography as the click-clack of a hoof striking wood returned. The four adults all turned towards the darkest stairs that led to the second floor. From the blackness appeared a single hoof, stepping delicately into the first illuminated step. A maniacal laugh sounded, infiltrating their heads in a way that forced them to grab at their ears, dropping to their knees and screaming in horror at the pain it caused. The second to last candle went out. Even as fire erupted within the upper level, the red and orange flames revealed the visitor as it stepped down the stairs. The adults remained in agony until it arrived at the main floor, the pain leaving their heads once it stepped from the final step. It laughed again as flames engulfed the railings and stairs behind it. Lillian frantically tried to unlock the latch once more, her hands burning on the molten red metal. Mr. Henshaw pushed her away, fiercely kicking at the wooden door, while Mr. Patrickson screamed at the top of his lungs for someone to help them. The approach of the visitor from the other side of the room echoed as the hooves clicked across the rapidly warping floorboards. I devoured your son, it said, forcing Mrs. Henshaw to look into its eyes. Samuel tasted divine. It licked its rotting lips with a tongue too long for this world. As the thing smiled, blood leaked from the creases alongside its eyes. Mr. Henshaw attacked the beast, throwing punch after fruitless punch. All the while it laughed and danced, the footwork immaculate and faster than a trained dancer could ever hope to perform. As the flames consumed the main floor, they realized their attempts to escape were futile. They were going to burn to death while this creature danced a jig and bared its maniacal smile. There is a way, it said, coming to a stop, close enough that they could see short puffs of breath below its nose with each exhale. Yes, there is. Please save us, Mr. Henshaw begged. His arms were wrapped protectively around his wife, but even that couldn't stop her skin from beginning to blister in extreme heat. There is no salvation, but come, walk with me through the flames and join similar folks on the other side, it said, walking now towards the burning staircase. Mr. Patterson didn't hesitate, the coward that he was. He grabbed his wife's hand, and pulled her after him, trying to catch up to the beast ascending the stairs. Please wait up, he said, his voice that of a petulant child. His wife remained screaming, her skin as blistered as Mr. Henshaw's. At the top of the stairs, the creature stopped and turned. It crouched down, half shrouded in the darkness that shouldn't exist in the flames, and called out to the three still by the door. Come, it said to Lillian and the Henshaws. There's nothing left for you here. The trio looked at each other, finding that as soon as they decided to follow, the flames no longer burned as hot. As they made their way up the stairs, the final candle blew out. Once all five were standing at the top of the stairs, the creature motioned and they all followed, stepping into the shadows that swirled and disappeared behind them. On the main floor, the flames that had burned so high faded away, leaving the house chillingly silent. Only the smell of sulfur and charred skin remained. The echoes of laughter carried away with the wind. Hope that's intriguing. Hope this airs in time so that you can pre-order or order or buy. Either way, I hope you read it at some point. So yeah, thanks Brad. Incarnate will be out in October. And I appreciate all you do for us. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody else has read for us. Awesome. Thanks again.